This is the Henry's Child Podcast. Am I crazy? Or am I just raving?
Greg Gillispie.
Hey, what's up, man?
Well, right now, talking to you is what's up.
That's good.
I like that we're surrounded by an audience. It's kind of a new thing. Normally, well, Tom's not really an audience. He's like the tech guy.
Yeah.
Right. Rich is here because he's... No, actually, because I invited him. I forgot.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I thought it was because of me, but whatever. I mean, we can roll it however you want, man.
Nice. Well, I'm going to open this with the same question we ask everybody. How did you get started in music? What was that inspirational moment? What was the place you were, the time you were that you said, I need to do that?
I was in second grade. I had the little boom box out on the porch and the hose in my hand, singing whatever was on the shitty Klamath Falls radio station. And I can, all the way back then, I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. And then that was like the first point that I realized I wanted to sing and do stuff like that. I was probably around the same age, and we were visiting a friend. The friend's kid got tired of me following him around. So he put me in the living room with a red Strat and a small amp, sat it on the floor and said, make some noise. And I can remember even at that point, which was only like 7 years old, going bum bum bam, bum bum bam, bum bum bam, ba da ba da bum bum. I already knew a riff, and the realization that a song is just a set of circular noises.
A set of circular noises. Sure, I like that.
And so my parents, I begged for a guitar when I was like 15, and they bought me a nylon string acoustic classical guitar.
You mean what you buy your child when he's super young because you're not sure if it's going to hold his attention for 1 hour or for the next 30 years?
Yeah, the problem is that I didn't know how to tune it, so I'd run across the street in the summer to my buddy's house, and his dad had a piano, and he would tune it by ear. And I'd run back across the street in 100-degree weather, sit down, and it was already out of tune. So I gave up and didn't really... I think I traded it for a video game system.
What reignited the spark then? I mean, it must have been a catalytic event or something that got you up in.
The irony here is that around the same time I had started DJing at KTEC, and I did 2 different stints there. The first stint was just regular DJ, just having a good time.
Top 40 stuff? What were you DJing?
What I would do is take a lot of the popular musicians, Alice in Chains and stuff like this, and find their weird B-sides and stuff like that. It was the beginning of the internet, so you could download all these great live covers that these bands were doing and these things that you don't have as much access to now. You can get it on YouTube, but the quality is less. So I did that, and that got me into playing guitar. I grabbed a guitar with a buddy of mine, $198 for Purple Cruise, Strat copy, with a shitty little amp, and sat in a shed and made awful noise and spent, I'm willing to bet, 4 years from the point that I tried to the point that I could sing a song and play at the same time. It was key to being able to be in a band, because I wasn't a great singer and I wasn't a great guitarist, but I could write songs, and if I could write and I could sing and I could play guitar, I could do any band I wanted. So I just proceeded to go ahead and go down that road and start writing. I can remember the first song I wrote, and it's still pretty good. And then I discovered that Oregon had real musicians, and that was fucking awesome. So that was my second stint at KTEC.
You even figured that out down in Klamath Falls.
And it was a shock.
I'll bet.
It was like I'd been doing all these things. I would do like acoustic versions of these songs and stuff, and my radio manager came in and he handed me a stack of CDs. And he said, every third song you play has to be off of one of these CDs. These are all local bands from Oregon, and we're promoting a show. And I was like, okay, can I take him home? And he said, yeah. So I took him home, and I'm like, who the fuck is Floater? Wow, this is tribal. This is pretty cool. There's these guys, Henry's Child. What the hell does that name even mean? This is good stuff, too. Sweaty Nipples, not as much. Kind of party rock, but I was okay with that. And I think Big Elf and a couple other bands, and I ended up...
Sailing by Jollymon in there?
I'm too much pot to know to remember.
To remember, got it.
Yeah. So I spun these records for probably a month and a half, and suddenly I was like, this blew my mind, because everything you saw on MTV was Pearl Jam or Metallica or Megadeth or all these different bands.
It seemed beyond reach.
Yeah, and here we are with a set of bands that are from Oregon, which Oregon's not known for anything. We're just a bunch of goddamn hippies. And these guys are great. They're as good as anything out there on the radio, if not better in a certain quality. The sound isn't grunge, but it's a relative. So it really drew me in real quick. And then the show. It wasn't just the music. The music was good, but I had no idea until I went to that show. Wow.
What was that show?
The Skateland show in Klamath Falls.
Playing the skating rink.
Yeah. I think that's the only... You guys are the only bands I can ever remember playing there.
Us and Floater?
Yeah, you and Floater. Sweaty Nipples didn't come down?
Jollymon was
Jollymon,
there.
yeah.
There was one more band, but I don't remember them either.
Yeah, I can't remember, but... Yeah.
That was a good show.
Dude,
I had a great time.
One of my buddies got stomped in the head. And, yeah. It was...
Wow, I love that. Hold on, let me back that up a little. I said, that was a great show. And Greg's like, yeah, one of my buddies got stomped in the head.
There was another giant dude just running through the crowd, like arms going, just taking people out. It was
fun.
That's what Klamath needed at the time.
Yeah.
Because we were seeing it at that point. If Eugene and Portland have good music scenes, then it spreads out to the smaller areas. And those kids want to emulate what they're seeing on the radio and local bands and stuff like that. So Toby talks about coming from down below Roseburg and stuff like that and being brought into the scene. And they had their own little scene. And even Klamath Falls, we would do at the top of Shasta Way, which is one of the main thoroughfares, there's a rent-a-hall. And we would rent the hall, and we would do like 8 band shows, like 1 o'clock until I think we had to close at 8 or 9. We just put on these giant shows. Everybody bring their PA gear in and whatever crappy lights we had, and we'd pretend to be like the big boys up in Portland and Eugene.
DIY.
Yeah.
That's how it starts, though.
It was
no
good.
Question. Yeah, I have no doubt. How'd you end up in Eugene?
I had just lost my job, and so I was like, hey, I'm going to go with my bass player. I left my wife and my kids with my father-in-law, and I basically threw a dart at the map and said, we're going to Monterey, California. Now, the real reason for going to Monterey is when I was younger, my sister took me there, and we were a block and a half from the beach, and I never got to see the beach the whole time. Instead, I had to babysit her damn kids, and her boyfriend went off with their friends and farted around. So I had this lingering thing, like, I never really got to see Monterey. So when we started looking at what California city we'd go to, I said Monterey, and my buddy didn't have any reason to argue. I was a terrible decision because Monterey is a little coastal tourist trap. And so there's no music scene there. And we ran into a band there. We were basically living in the car for about 3 months. And at the end, when I was like, this isn't working, a band called In Balance out of Monterey took us in and let us sleep on their couch for a couple weeks so we could save up some money to come back to Oregon. And I said, okay, I don't want to go stay in Klamath. So my 2 choices are Portland or Seattle. And my wife is like, And I hear the deafening silence, and I go, or the dark horse is Eugene. And she goes, yeah, Eugene. And I go, why? Because my family is only a couple hours away. Okay, I can't really argue this. Good point. So we ended up in Eugene.
Have to believe some of the shock of going from a Klamath to a Seattle might have been a little intimidating.
Yeah. I mean, going from 40,000 people in the rural area
to 2.5 for 3 million.
Yeah.
So it seems like Eugene would be a good
nice
compromise.
middle. Yeah. And then we rooted here, and I'm not leaving. I genuinely like this small little hippie communist enclave called Eugene.
How did you start music here in Eugene? You came with your bass player? Did he come with you to Eugene also? So is your bass player still the same bass player you play with?
No.
And what year is this, by the way, to give it a little context? When did you land in Eugene?
My daughter is 13, so I moved here about 14 and a half years ago.
Okay.
So we came back up, and we rented a U-Haul, and we got this little 2-bedroom apartment in Springfield. So he and I started playing acoustic stuff around town just to keep playing. Our guitarist that we'd worked with for years, he eventually came up. So we reformed the band we had in Klamath, which was called Sunday Straitjacket. And it was kind of grungy, kind of ragey, not clean vocals, a lot more aggressive, heavy stuff. We played around here for about 2 years. And we went and recorded with Matt Feltes at a Central Node.
All right.
And when we got done recording, he goes, okay, so don't do what every band does and break up. So at that point, my bass player went back to Alaska for a little while. And when he came back, I'd been out of, playing for a month and a half, 2 months, and he wanted to do these epic 4-hour practices. And I was like, dude, I need to like, this was great. Let's take a couple days off and we come back and hit it again. And he's like, no, I want to do it tomorrow. So I conceded. And the next day he walks in, he doesn't have his bass. And I was like, hey, dude, where's your bass? Let's make some fucking noise. He's all, yeah, dude, I don't want to be in a band with you anymore. And we'd always joke in practice, you're fired. So I was like, ha, 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 shut the fuck up and get in here and play. And he's like, no, dude, I don't want to play with you anymore. I'm done. And at that moment, my mind switched. Now, I didn't realize what was about to happen. And I turned to the rest of the band. And I go, that's okay. We don't need him. And I can see in their eyes that this has already been discussed. And I was like, shit.
He didn't get Starbucked. He got garaged.
Yeah.
Were you practicing in a garage?
Yeah.
Yeah, he got garaged.
And so I kind of had a fit, and there was a bit of a meltdown, and I walked outside, and I drank a beer, and I came back in, and I go, you know what? I've been fighting with you guys for years, and I have a vision, and I'm doing a lot of the work, and I really just, I'm done. I don't want a democracy anymore. I want a Gregocracy. I'm okay with forming another band. And they were like, well, we're going to keep the name. And I was like, no, you're not. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, no. I go, look, you can keep the name. I can't actually stop you. But if you want to continue this friendship, then let's both start over at the same time. I'm okay with that. Split the songs up, which in the end, they all come back to me because the band is gone. So then I picked up bass. I'd always been a guitarist at that point. And I was like, I'll never work with another bass player again. And so the easiest way to eliminate that.
Always good to live your life in absolutes. That never comes back to bite you.
Oh, it did. So I hung out with Luke a lot, and I was like, he was like a brother. So I would sit on his floor and whine and bitch about why you kicked me out of my own fucking band. Then I shifted to show me how you play bass. And Luke Martin does these beautiful, intricate bass lines, and he's really, active. And I was like, cool, I'll never do that. Slap. Learn to slap as quickly as possible and get this funky thing going, because it wasn't something we were doing very often in the old band.
Sure.
And I wanted to separate what we were doing. So I formed Hyding Jekyll based off of, I wrote this riff, and then I watched Fight Club, and I wrote down lines from Fight Club and ideas and thoughts, and I went back with my bass, and I played it and kind of mumble-eased my way through it, and wrote the song Durden, which is basically the song that started Hyding Jekyll. And
what year was this?
This is our 10-year anniversary.
Got it.
Literally, I tried a couple people out, and on my daughter's birthday, her birthday party was at 3. I said, okay, I got these guys coming over, and we're going to go ahead and, jam. These guys called Nuclear Omega want to see if I can be their singer. So we jammed a little bit, and something happened, so I had cut it short. And I was like, before we do that, I brought my bass in, and I was like, so I want to show you a couple songs. And I showed it to them, and they were like, cool, and they left. And I waited about a day, and I called the guitarist back, and I was like, hey, Brian, so I don't think I want to join Nuclear Omega. I'm a better bass player than your bass player, and I haven't been playing that long. And if it was you and the drummer, I would have said yes, but I don't think, I really like a power trio. I don't think we need all this extra stuff. And he goes, can I call you back in a minute? And I go, yeah. He calls me back about 15 minutes later, and he's all, so Justin and I will be over there next Tuesday. I fired the rest of the band. We're going to go ahead and start this. So I basically played my cards and was like, I like these guys, but I don't like these guys. I'm going to fold those. And it worked out. We played within 2 months we were on stage. And it was definitely a more aggressive band than it is today. They were very metal, and I was very kind of the psychedelic, funky, heavy stuff, which created great dynamics because you'd have these beautiful middle pieces that would kind of space out, but then it would get aggressive and then back to that. But there was a lot of ebb and flow with the band, and at certain points, both guys ended up leaving the band and bringing new guys in. It was okay. The transition every time was a little closer to my vision, and
nice.
I can't complain, yeah.
Well, you're still doing it, so it must be working for you.
10 years later, yeah.
It must be working for you. Yeah, which iteration of Hyding Jekyll is it?
Currently?
Yeah.
I think third.
Third,
so I would say Justin and Brian were the first. Brian left to go join a band with Boots called New World Center. And he kind of did both for a little while, and then he had to quit one. Chose them. We brought David in, and David and Justin worked together for a little while. Then I let Justin go. When I got Jeremy, he had played with a band called Broken Cell that we played with a lot, which was kind of a Tool 10 years kind of band. And I knew he was good. And so brought him over to jam. He goes, well, no bass players have been able to play this riff with me. So if you can do this, then I think we've got something. And he plays this cool drum beat, and I walk into a nice groove, and we play for a little while, and that was kind of it. We were like, you want to be the band? It's like, yeah, I want to be in the band. Cool.
When was that?
That was probably about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And then David, about 2.5 years ago, had to move to Portland.
Yep.
And it was we were playing the MMA fights in Eugene, and we were doing the opening where we play as people come in, and we'd set up, and he goes, hey, man, I think I'm going to move to Portland. Job opportunities aren't working out here, and I need to go. And I was like, well, I love you, bro, and family first. You can't knock that. Yeah. So I wish you the best. You don't mind, but we're going to continue on. And he went so far as to make sure he was there around while we were bringing in the new guy, so he would show him some of the riffs. And we were actually in the middle of recording when this happened. Mm-hmm. So we were recording the third chapter of the series, and so it's a little discombobulated because he came in and recorded his tracks, and then we had the new guy come in and record a bunch of tracks, and then kind of chose which ones fit the song the best. And we brought the keyboard player in at the same time. So Nick and Eric joined. Eric, we tried like 4 guitarists out, and Eric was the one that was messaging me every other day. Hey, man, what about this song? What do you do here? What key is this in? You know, so he made sure I knew.
Passion counts.
He made sure I knew he was interested.
Right.
So he came in, did a great job, learned the music really, really quickly.
Well, if he's not even in the band and he's asking you about chord changes and songs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's some focus. I like that.
Yeah, and then it came, I believe he came to first Possible Human Origins show, and he came to the last David Wow Hall show. So he was there watching David before he'd even joined the band. Plus, he'd paid $5 to get into one, $10 to get into another. I mean, he was paying money to be
What I like is it sounds to me like he decided he was in the band before you did.
Oh, yeah. And he convinced me this was it.
That's awesome. I love that.
I asked him what his influences were, and for the longest time, I'd worked in the Sunday Straight Jacket with one of my best friends, Jeremy Lockhart, and his influences were Stevie Ray Vaughan, Kurt Cobain, and Tom Morello. And this kid said the same thing. I was like, I knew there was a reason we worked together well. I mean, he just plays to the style. And, you know, he can be blues, he can be heavy, he can be all these different things. Right. Very versatile. And at the same time, we brought in Nick Pearson. And Nick Pearson is a phenomenal keyboard player. How'd
you meet him?
But he was friends with Jeremy Stafford, my drummer.
Right, Jeremy.
He joined us on stage once with Pick Six, and he was out of key because he didn't know we were playing Half Step Down. And so my initial impression was, I didn't really know who the kid was, and
nothing he played sounded good.
And he totally got hosed. We knew instantly. I was like, he's playing a piano, not realizing we're Half Step Down. This isn't working. The guitarist in Pick Six at the time yelling across the stage. This moment was odd. So again, we'd always talked about bringing in a keyboard player, but I had always envisioned somebody who could play guitar, play bass, play keyboards, be able to do a lot of things, be multifaceted. He came in and he played, we were doing 15 minutes, and I always felt that the chorus was really empty. Like there was vocals, but I always felt that if I wasn't hitting it, I was going to fall through the song. And when he came in and he hit his chords on the piano, it suddenly gave a voice that wasn't there before.
Isn't 15 Minutes one of your favorite songs? I like that song.
Yeah, that was written by David Affinito. And
why don't we go ahead and play that? So this is 15 Minutes, which I remember when you brought it up. It's one of my favorite songs by you guys. What's the name of the album now?
So it's The Chronicles of 3, and we're just doing chapter names, so chapter 1, 2. This is chapter 3, and we're working on chapter 4, but this is the lead title. This is what we would have made the single, so to speak. This is 15 Minutes.
Nice. Nice. That is definitely one of my favorites by you guys.
It seems to be the fan favorite too. Like the ability to finish the song, step away, and have everybody sing it back to you. That was always one of my dreams.
It's catchy. And you're telling me it's even better now.
It is. So David and I were playing, and he's playing the riff that starts out, and I just walked up to the mic and I go, give you 15 minutes, and I swear I'll save your soul. And at that moment, I was like, oh, shit, write that shit down right now. Because I knew that I could play with one of my characters and use that. But again, so, just having guitar, bass, and drums, there was always something that I felt was a little missing. And that was the first point that we knew how much Nick Pearson, the keyboard player, would add to the band. When he came in, and I think that's probably the first song we played with him, and he just laid down this nice layer and gave me basically a way to sing and be caught if something wasn't perfect. It's actually changed my playing. It's changed my singing.
You would have to.
It changed my writing. Yeah, because this is the first album, the one we're working on now, Chapter 4. This is the first album out of any band I've ever been in where I didn't write 70 to 80% of the songs. And I've literally only wrote 3. So the rest were written by Eric or Nick. And I had a vision for the final album. And as soon as I got these two guys in and they were writing and there was so much musical energy going on that I just stepped back and I was like, let's see what happens. Nick was doing not songwriting. He was at the U of O studying like arrangements and stuff like that. So he's truly an educated and gifted musician. And so he'll talk about chords and I'll go, oh, so that's E. Okay, right here. Bass play.
Hold on, which string?
Yeah, it makes it easy.
I can usually find the A.
I used to drive a lot on the bass, and I don't have to anymore.
Right, you should.
The melodies are kicked in by the keyboard player. Yeah. It's exciting just being able to lay back on a good, easy, simple groove and be able to sing my ass off.
How's Jeremy liking the directional change?
I guess you'd have to ask him. I mean, he loves the band.
Might have to. He hasn't threatened to quit or anything, has he?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Nick is a very diverse musician, so he will literally come in and do anything from jazz to like show tune sounding stuff. And we don't care when we're in the practice room. We'll kick in with whatever we got. Sure. But there's definitely songs that end up flooding in and making sense to the project that we're working with. And there's songs that we get done and go, well, that was different. Oh, okay, cool. I mean... if you don't bring it back next time, I won't remind you, but that was cool, Right. And I'm learning new things, new styles, different ways to play. But Eric being pretty well-educated musically too, those two collaborate, and they can go through and start working out like complementary leads and solos that are kind of playing off of each other. You're getting a lot of that going on too. There's a lot of jam space where these guys go back and forth.
Fun.
And I'm now part of the rhythm section.
How about that?
Before I was driving the songs, and now I look back at the drummer and be like, okay, we got this.
Well, you're in the middle of recording the new album?
We started scratch tracks. We're heading to a home studio to lay down actual tracks, and then the hope is to get it off to a very well-known producer that will remain nameless for now. So I don't have to eat my crow later. But we got an opportunity to meet somebody that did some incredible music when I was younger, and she offered to record an album with us.
Nice.
And I was more than stoked. We've got 18 songs, and we're going to knock it down to probably 14. And then when we go and record, we'll probably knock it down to 10 to 12.
Sounds about right. That's a good ratio.
Yeah.
Good ratio.
So,
well, I'm looking forward to it. No dates that.
No. In fact, there is a running joke that I am not allowed to talk about a CD release party without said CD in my hand.
In your hands, yes.
In my hands. I now have to preface, I have this idea, and when I have the CD in my hand, I'd like to do blank.
Right.
And they all not. Because I've had more than one CD release party go afoul based on
due to release of music. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a thing these days.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, part of this connection, while we're in this room right now, is you reaching out. Did you initially reach out to me or to Rich for Memory of Green to play with Strange Dichotomy?
So it was actually Mitch Chamberlain.
It was. That's right.
I had hit him up. I was doing a series in Eugene called Eugene Raw. So I formed Strange Dichotomy. It was not a metal band or a hard rock band. So all my connections were in the hard rock and metal area. So my idea was, in order to continue working with these musicians, I would have them come in, strip down and do an acoustic set with us, and we would headline depending on who the band was. And so the first 2 or 3 shows were phenomenal. 100 some people and Cosmic Pizza, and great energy and good bands and a lot of fun. And then it started to peter off, and we were having a harder time getting bands to come in and play with us. And I hit Mitchell up to try and get him and Gladhander to come in and do an acoustic set. And he's like, well, you know who Andy is, right? And I was like, no. He's all from Henry's Child. And I was like, it's been a while. I remember the name, but I haven't gone back in those CDs in a long time. And he's all, well, he's in Memory of Green, and I think they'd be a perfect fit for the show. And that was my introduction to you.
Got it.
It was meeting you at that show. I think it was the first time I met both of you. So there was like 30 people there at that one.
And who was your hand drummer?
Mr. Jason Rowe.
Indeed. I'll never forget. Jason cornered me after that show.
Oh, yeah?
And he was just really cool. I mean, he was a fan in that moment, but it was really authentic and intense. And I'm like, I mean, he landed. I was like, wow, thank you. I mean, he talked about his memories of Henry's Child and listening to the albums and whatnot. And we had a great conversation. And he was just really intense. I loved it. It was great talking to him.
He, so I dealt with Zach and done shows with Forest Hills Fall and stuff like that quite a few times. And at one point when we were looking for a new guitarist, Jason's name was brought up, and I was like, okay. And so he came in, he played one gig. And at the time, I had told my drummer at the time, Justin, I was like, nobody's going to walk in and do what Brian does. Brian was phenomenal, and it's just not going to happen. So we need to accept that the next guy coming in is going to be different and not be able to. And I was wrong. So Jason walked in, and he played pretty much our entire set. First time we practiced, perfect.
Wow. So you're telling me he got the job?
He got you, well, without a doubt. I did not know at the time that we had pulled him out of a 10-year sabbatical. He had not played in 10 years.
See, there you go.
His drummer had died from cancer, I believe. It hit him really hard. And so we played with him the one show in Corvallis in the guy's backyard. And him and the drummer didn't really mesh. So he was done. He didn't play again after that. He quit.
Wow. That's a serious non-mesh.
Bam.
That, oh,
and
goodness
so
gracious.
when I started to form Strange Dichotomy, which was originally a loop station group, the bass player that fired me come in and we were jamming, and he's like, I could write some great bass lines to this. And it had been long enough. Luke Martin, yeah. It had been long enough that I was like, okay, dude, I'll play with you.
No, and I love the incestuousness of this entire thing.
Yeah.
That Luke plays an Authoress.
Yeah.
With Toby and Sebastian.
Yes.
I just so wonderfully incestuous.
It's you've seen the grunge family tree. Well, we're trying to do it in all of Oregon. Yeah. So Luke and I formed the band and started playing, and we were looking for, I go, what I want is a hand drummer that plays like a kit drummer. And I told Zach about it, Zach Rowe, and he goes, oh, Jason would love that. And I go, I don't think Jason likes me. And he's like, no, dude, it's not that at all. And I go, I really don't know. He played with us, and he was out of Hyding Jekyll in no time at all. I really don't think he's a fan of me. And he goes, it's not you. Okay. So I gave Jason a call, and he came out, and he had this giant hand drum kit, and he played driving and heavy. And I was like, that's it. We just got our hard rock acoustic band. This is amazing. Brought in a guy named Kyle Brewster as the acoustic guitarist, or the lead guitarist, and we were off and running. And
I happen to say I know several people, most of them women actually, that like Strange Dichotomy more than Hyding Jekyll.
You know, it's not the first time I've heard it, and I'm okay with that.
And
that's the beauty.
And that's nothing. It's all musical taste. We had plenty of people that liked Memory of Green more than they liked Henry's Child, namely both of my parents. But quite seriously, like my dad puts that CD on. You know, it's one of the few CDs I see on his shelf that he actually plays in his boombox downstairs.
Yeah, Rick.
He loves that.
Trotton, who's a big supporter of the Albany Rose and those musicians. Every time I run into him, and in fact, at the benefit, he walks up, he goes, the CD's still in my car, man.
Yeah,
still listen to it all the time.
That's good.
It was great music, and it was different. Well, see, Hyding Jekyll was supposed to be both things. Strange Dichotomy was never meant to be born. It was meant to be, I formed this band that I could do both the heavy and the acoustic with. And I had a meeting one day with the band members, and I was like, we're going to do the acoustic thing. And the drummer at the time was like, I'm going to play my kit. And I was like, I'm on a Taylor, man. You can't play your kit. He's like, no, I'll play my kit. And so I realized the vision wasn't going to work the way I had hoped. And I was like, okay, never mind.
So after that show, now Memory of Green disintegrated after that. And I'm leading this somewhere, obviously, because this is it's interesting. Soon after that, or maybe it was about a year actually before Memory of Green broke up. Memory of Green played that show, and that's where we met each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was about a year later. Memory of Green falls apart, and Rich sends me a copy of King Animal and says, "Listen to this," and says we can play heavy music.
Soundgarden, yeah.
Soundgarden. That's a great album, a fantastic album to this day. And I've been away too long.
Yeah.
Sounds like Jason Rowe felt the same way.
Yeah.
Then we formed Mnemonic Machines, and we're looking for shows. And contacting you, or you contacted me. You knew we were doing the Mnemonic Machines thing.
Yeah.
We played a few shows. Played a couple with you.
Yeah, we played Black Forest. You guys played right before us.
Played Goodfellas.
Yeah. The benefit of Goodfellas, yeah, for Jeremy's roommate. And then we had a CD release party coming up, and we'd invited you to take over our show. I mean,
well, but Mnemonic Machines was going to play that show.
Yeah, you guys were going to go ahead and be our supporting band for it.
And then Mnemonic Machines flaked out. I think it was you that said that we should do Henry's Child again.
No, it was a phone call, and you said, "Hey, I've got good news and bad news." And it was probably 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the CD release party, and you said,
"Yeah,
Mnemonic Machines just broke up." And I was like, "Oh, fuck! Why is this always happening right before shows?" And he's all, "But I got good news. We talked with Doug, and I think we're getting Henry's Child back together." I was like, "Oh, cool. Want to play? Like, don't miss a beat. Bam, right on that shit." And you were like, "Yeah, but now don't take this the wrong way." Is that how he does it? And don't take this the wrong way. It's been 20 years. I think we should go ahead and headline this for a reunion show. And I was like, let me talk it out with the band. And I went back to the band, and there was initially a little bit of like, well, but it's our show. And I go, but they're going to draw really well. Let's get to the business side of this. It doesn't matter our personal feelings. Would you rather headline the show in front of 45 people, or would you rather play supporting cast to one of the legendary bands in this area that, whether they can draw down the road, this one day, they will pull in a lot of people? It made sense. It made sense. And I was actually one of the better Wow Hall shows I've put on, probably in the top 5. I mean, I've had a couple that have done 400 and stuff like that, but that really requires a consistent cast of bands that can bring, over 70
people to just show up and leave.
But yeah, that was a killer show.
It was way fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Fun.
It knocked a notch on my belt. I wanted to play with Floater. I played with Floater. I wanted to play with Henry's Child. I've played with Henry's Child. I wanted to play with Assisted Living. I've played with Assisted Living. I wanted to play with Jollymon. I've played with Jollymon. So I'm slowly, over time, my goal is not fame, although if it grabs me by the head and has its way, I'm cool. But my goal is to play with these bands I love and I enjoy playing with. The opportunity to play with you guys, the opportunity to play with Floater, the opportunity to play with Jollymon was always more important than the show itself or, these type of things. It was like, I get to play with people I look up to.
Helped inspire you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, not many people can say they got to share the stage with their heroes. And I've done it several times. I've got to share the stage with bands that made me want to go do this.
Yeah, there you go. That's the best way you said it right there.
Yeah. Maybe people say I set my sights low, and I think they just didn't get to hear great bands. Oregon is underheard.
Well, I think is interesting when people say you set your sights low. They've never played music and been inspired by another band, because it truly is an amazing thing to do that. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. People say things like that when they don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't understand. It's an addiction.
Indeed. We talked about that. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago with Bash and Kevin Richardson. It's in your blood. It'll never leave.
It's two forms. Like I can go make music anytime I want. I can literally, to quote Jason, he sat down next to my wife one day and he goes, it pours out of him, right? Like every time I come in, he's got a new riff, a new song. Every time you say, write something, he's got it. It's amazing. Now, he didn't compliment my voice. He didn't compliment my guitar playing. What he complimented is that
you're creative.
It's always coming. And it was such a great compliment because it wasn't to me.
Nice.
It was to somebody else, and I got to hear it on the second way around.
So, any upcoming dates for Hyding Jekyll?
Yeah, July 21st, we're playing at the Lane County Fair.
Nice.
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. That'll be warm.
Yes, it will. And then the 27th, we are playing opening at Wow Hall with Vile Experiment.
Oh, nice.
One Gun Shy, and I cannot remember the other band name. They're from out of town.
Okay.
So those are the two on the horizon at this point.
Fantastic. Now, PHO.
Human Origins.
Your acoustic project. I've seen you guys a couple times. You guys are good. Covers, reinterpretations of songs, right?
Yeah, so the great thing about being a 3-piece acoustic band is when somebody goes, well, how are you going to play Tools sober? We're going to do it however we want because it's 2 guitars and a hand drum set.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, it de facto took the place of Strange Dichotomy. When that went under, I still had these ideas and wants to do something opposed to.
And your 2 guys in the band?
Pete Pergament.
Yeah.
And
nice guy. I like Pete.
and Riley. They both, Riley had come in at the end to help with Strange Dichotomy.
Okay.
And then that fell apart. And Pete and I worked together at Semantic, and we talked about jamming and playing. We played a little bit, and I was like, I know a drummer.
This will be fun.
And we got Riley, and we started playing just little coffee shops and then beer tasting rooms and a couple wine tasting rooms. But the beer, I originally envisioned it as a
more of a beer
winery
band.
No,
more
as
beer band than a
band.
wine band. Oh,
no, it was originally we're going to
okay.
go play wineries, and what I realized is wineries don't want lounge rock. You know,
you're more of a beer band.
Yeah, those places. Agrarian Ales loves us. The Beer Garden, so many of the others.
Any shows coming up?
May 25th, we are at the Tasting Room for Sweet Cheeks.
Nice.
Right downtown, and it'll be a quieter affair. We don't bring a lot of gear in. We just have one monitor so we can hear ourselves, and it's almost all acoustic. And we cover the gambit as far as Nancy Sinatra to Cage the Elephant to Tool to Prince. We have an album that has probably 5 more vocal tracks, and that'll be done. And that's half originals, half covers. And at this point, we probably have another album's worth of music that's just been writing in the background.
Fun.
So, yeah. We didn't intend it to have original music, but we were both writers. It had to happen.
I think with that, we might be finished, my friend.
There we go.
Thanks for the drive up.
Of course.
Appreciate you as always. And I'm sure we'll be playing again together.
Oh, let's do it.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.